And we'll go on to item 18, Mr. Gatto.
Well, good afternoon again. This is Assembly Bill 1483. I want to thank the members of the committee who have agreed to co-author the measure. That's Vice Chair Baker and Assemblyman Lowe. This would require the LAO to start the process on the feasibility of creating a new UC campus, one that is entirely devoted to the STEM subjects, or what's now called STEAM, because the inclusion of art into the mix. Each year, as we all know, thousands of applicants are turned away from the University of California, and many of them leave the state to pursue their education elsewhere. I think everybody can agree that retaining our best and brightest students in this state really has a benefit. Obviously, the number of people who might go out of state and attend MIT, some of them fall in love with the Massachusetts area and they stay there. And that's something that we probably should not be doing here in California. During the 11-year period in the 1960s, the state of California, our predecessors in the legislature and on the regions, created 5 new UC campuses in one 11-year period. The demands of the workforce are changing. We all know that lots of tech companies are forced to go overseas to find qualified graduates in the STEM subjects. And if you look at the things that are the highest paying jobs right now, things like animation and aviation and application design for phones, these are things that combine somewhat of an artistic knowledge with also a very, very technical knowledge. So it just makes sense to have a University of California campus that focuses on this. There is precedent for this. We all know that Hastings, of course, is a college of law, and there's a very high-ranked one at that. So this bill, I think, is a sensible first step in the process, and it's one that is good for the future of California. There's very few things we can do here that will affect future generations 25 years in advance, but this bill is one of them, and I respectfully ask for aye vote.
Any witnesses in support?
I'd like to just say what I said the bill before, but apparently STEAM has been so successful with me, I can't pay attention to what I'm doing in the moment, so that shouldn't be why you should support this initiative. This is an economic initiative, and in California we've got a 40% gap by 2020 of men and women who should be trained in STEAM skills, and this bill will help us get there. My name is Tracy Seville. I represent women in science and technology in California and Quintia, and I have a network of over 10,000 women in California who are a byproduct of what STEAM education has done for them, but they've cobbled it together, and this is a strong step forward not just for California but for the entire country. There's 1.1 million jobs we currently don't have the ability to fill by 2020 in the United States, and that's a life and a quality of life killer if we don't do something. And this bill will, in fact, ensure that California gets there. Thank you.
Any other witnesses in support?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Kara Bush with Tech America. I apologize, we missed the analysis. However, we would like to applaud the author for exploring the first UC campus dedicated solely to science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And so with that, I think that there's a significant demand for workers trained and educated in the STEM field, and creating a UC campus devoted solely to STEM will help create greater workforce for the tech community. And for these reasons, we respectfully ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Any other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition? Seeing no witnesses, any questions or comments from the committee? I want to thank the author for bringing it forward, and I understand, very well understand, the value and the importance of STEM and combining it with the arts. But at this time, I would have to say, as chair of the Higher Education Committee, that I think we are missing in the state of California a body that would best take a look at when and how we open up new campuses, whether they be of CSU or UC. And for that reason, I have a none recommendation.
Sure. And I'll address that in my close, so thank you very much. And this committee saw a similar bill by Assemblymember Eggman, and I know you voted for it. I recognize that too. We identified that as a problem when we first set out to do this bill this year, that body no longer exists. But we, at the same token, didn't want to hold up the process because that body does not exist. We figured we would vest it in the LAO, which has a good reputation for doing things in a nonpartisan way and studying these things as well. I do think we need to resuscitate that body, but I can't. I don't think this bill or any of the other bills, Ms. Eggman's or whatever, should live or die based on a decision that is not germane necessarily to this bill. So hopefully it's something we could address in a separate budget action or a separate piece of legislation as we decide to move forward. But this bill, on the merits, is I think one that is worthy of our consideration. And I think this is a real legacy project for this legislature. It's one that really could do a whole lot of good for Californians for generations to come. And I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Can I get clarification? You're requesting $50 million to, is that right?
Correct.
To buy land?
This has actually a two-part. It's a two-part. So the first step would be a study on the feasibility, and it would present that information to the regents. And if this was feasible, if this was something that was determined to be where there was a need, where there's empirical data, where there's evidence that shows that we're not meeting the need of California graduates, which I believe is clear, that it's something that we can do, that the system can absorb this type of new campus, then it would appropriate $50 million in acquisition costs, and that would be land acquisition and whatever else. The reason why it's not specific is because UC Merced, I believe, only cost $11 million in land acquisition. It was not that expensive as these things go. It's because the regents chose to locate it in a place where land was not that expensive. Now, if they locate this in Chula Vista, it might be more than $50 million.
Free.
I'm sorry. In Chula Vista, it would be free. That's right.
Acres for you.
That's right.
Already.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if that was the case, if they locate this in Chula Vista, the $50 million would go to building costs as opposed to land acquisition, and that's why we leave it a little bit vague. But I know that that's been a cause that you've championed, and we are mindful of that.
Yeah.
I didn't want to.
No, I was just trying to figure out what the $50 million was for. Is it for land and ongoing and cost of putting the campus together, or is it just for land, or is it for pre-planning? The budget. Construction too in $50 million.
It's the first appropriation for land and acquisition costs, and that would include, if for some reason they get it for free, it would be breaking ground on the buildings and things like that.
So basically the beginning, but then there'd be
Correct.
more coming later on.
Correct,
Yeah.
things.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
Well, the bill does say the establishment of an acquisition of land for.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Establishment of is what's, exactly.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, apologies for being late. Robert Callahan with the Internet Association. We are in support of the bill. I think it's important to encourage more homegrown STEM education in the state of California. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
No. So
Moved by Ms. Baker, second by Mr. Bloom? No, I'm sorry, second by Mr. Williams. So the motion is due past to Appropriation Committee. Madam Secretary.
He had a question.
Just a quick comment. I'm going to stay off of the bill today. I think the price tag in an era of constrained resources is pretty high, but I'd be a lot more inclined to support something like this if I knew that the industry in California that this is going to benefit, I would say chiefly our booming tech sector, were not just behind it in terms of being behind a bill, but if they're putting their dollars up to support it. I'd like to see $50 million on the table as seed money to support a campus like this before the state starts allocating money.
Yeah, and we would certainly entertain some sort of matching program within the bill. As you know, those are somewhat extraordinary and they're somewhat difficult to do. As previously in my role of chairman of appropriations, we would wrestle with bills like that because it's kind of difficult as a government entity to to require and to partner with private firms, essentially, that are donating to something that is a public school. But that being said, we're happy to entertain anything that that would get this moving forward. I think it's a very important issue. I think a lot of the other things that we're wrestling with, including affirmative action, could be helped by creating another UC campus. I'll address also the first thing you said, which is an era of scarce resources. Yes, we are in scarce resources. I've served in this legislature since 2010. 2010, the first budget that we did, we were here till October just trying to get a budget done. We were in session every day, spending the night most nights till October to get a budget done, and I have not forgotten that. But this year there is a surplus, and the surplus runs in the billions per month with a B. And I think that we all talked about, when we finally had a surplus, about putting our money where our mouth was and putting it into something like higher education. And this is an opportunity. It's not going to do everything. It's not going to solve all of the issues with higher education, and it's not going to even fund this whole campus. But it's a start. It's a start to placing a new college campus in the state of California for something that is the high-paying jobs. And I think we clearly need it. I mean, you look at the number of valedictorians who are turned down from UCLA and Berkeley every year. It's in the thousands. So this is a start. It's putting the ball in motion. Everything has to start somewhere. And I think this bill is a good start.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the statement that Mr. Bloom just gave. I do think the price tag's a little high from what we might be able to afford this year. To me, the first step is we need to enroll the students that we have ready to be admitted right now, which will take about an additional $100 million on top of what the governor has proposed in both the UC and CSU. But I do think that the author, by putting out a bill about a new campus, brings up the future need, and so I'm not on appropriations. I don't want to say that I support $50 million, but I do support working towards this in the future. I particularly think it would be dysfunctional to fund this and not fund the enrollment increase we need right now. But that being said, I'm glad that you're putting something out about the future.
Thank you. And I wrote an op-ed for the LA Times where I talked about those precise issues. I think we could do both. I agree with you 100%. We need to address that enrollment issue. I do note, though, that some of the UCs are at capacity. I mean, you really can't squeeze too many more people into Westwood. In Westwood, a one-bedroom apartment is $2,500 for a one-bedroom apartment because there are 40,000 students crammed into this little area. And, at some point, we do have to say, we are going to build a new elite UC campus, and this legislature has that will. This legislature did this 5 times in an 11-year period, 5 times in the 1950s and 60s. We talk about the greatest generation. Here's our chance. So, thank you.
Motion is due passed to Appropriations Committee. Madam Secretary.
Medina.
Not voting.
Medina not voting. Baker. Aye. Baker, aye. Bloom. Bloom not voting. Chavez. Harper. No. Harper, no. Irwin. Aye. Irwin, aye. Jones Sawyer. Jones Sawyer not voting. Levine. Linder. Linder, aye. Lowe. Santiago. Weber.
As chair of budget, I shouldn't vote.
Weber not voting.
She's still talking.
Williams. Williams, aye.
4-1, your bill is on call.
Thank you very much.
Next, item 17, Mr. Gray.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members.
Good afternoon, Mr. Gray. May begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. It's interesting to get the opportunity to come up here and present on the heels of Mr. Gatto's presentation, being the assembly person who has the honor of representing UC Merced. which is a campus, Mr. Chair, that you've recently had the opportunity to visit, and thank you on behalf of my community for doing that. We have a whole lot of room for growth. We're at roughly 6,000 students at the moment, and would love to build that campus into the 20,000 level that some of our larger urban campuses are at. And as you know, Mr. Chair, there was a commitment made on behalf of this institution to build a campus in Central California and to have a major research university built to service that part of California and to service all of California. And certainly if we're going to make new investments, I think we've got to build out the infrastructure we have. UC Merced would be a recipient. And also at the core of why I have AB 1433 before you here today. Since the late 1980s, members, the voters of California have approved bonds for public education every 2 to 4 years. Since the late 1990s, the voters of California approved just under $10 billion for higher education facilities. And the last statewide general obligation bond, Prop 1D, was approved by our voters in November of 2006, authorizing the last $3 billion for higher education facilities. That funding has since been exhausted. The purpose of AB 1433 is to reinvest in the UC, CSU, and community college systems for ongoing needs of modernization and construction of educational facilities. This bill will provide vital resources to ensure public higher education remains affordable while boosting enrollment, to provide overdue funding while taking costs off the back of students through tuition and fee increases. Without action, California will undoubtedly fall behind, meaning a drag on the state's economy and more jobs unfilled because of an uneducated workforce. And investment in education now means a more vibrant economy down the road. We are long overdue in investing in our higher education facilities, which will best help our economy rebound to its fullest potential. There are key components missing in this bill, as you can see, members, specifically how much each system requires to meet our enrollment demands. Mr. Chairman, I'm committed to working with you and this committee and the three systems to determine what makes the most sense as we move forward. But I would encourage the committee and ask that we move forward with the idea that we should make an investment in our capital facilities. So with that, I would respectfully ask for your aye vote, sir.
Witnesses in support.
Wes Larson, California State University. We applaud Mr. Gray in his leadership on this. Your analysis reflects the plight of the CSU. Our need is $400 to $500 million. Our capital plan, which is a 5-year plan, our need together is well over $7 billion, as your analysis reflects. We ask for your aye vote.
Justin Selnick on behalf of the California Community Colleges Chancellor's Office in support.
Sandy Freed with the University of California, also in support.
Mark McDonald, McCallum Group, on behalf of a number of local community college districts, Los Angeles, Los Rios here in Sacramento, Peralta, San Francisco, San Bernardino. And I'll just say that traditionally the state-local partnership has worked very well for community colleges, and we would encourage that this legislature continue to do that. Thank you.
Rebecca Curley on behalf of the Community College Facility Coalition. Facilities are a key component to ensuring access to higher education and that our students are ready to join the 21st century workforce. Thank you.
Name and group you're with.
Ryan McElhaney at the Community College League of California, testifying on behalf of California's 72 community college districts in support.
Ashley Satude on behalf of the North Orange County Community College District in support.
Any witnesses in opposition? Questions or comments from the committee? Ms. Irwin.
Just a quick comment. I am going to support this right now because obviously I agree that this is one of our top priorities in the state, fixing the infrastructure. But I will reserve the right on the floor to vote no after we see what's in front of us. There are a number of bonds coming through, and I think that we do need to be aware of the total price tag.
Mr. Gray, would you like to close?
Yes, I would.
Mr. Joensor.
I'll defer to Mr. Joensor.
Now, I'll make this quick. As someone that worked real hard to build government infrastructure in the city of L.A., it's always important to find a funding source. I love the other bill, the one that came in before you, STEAM or STEM, whichever. But I think we need some direction on where the money and funds come from. As my colleague from San Diego said, she didn't think she needed to vote on that bill because it's a pretty big price tag. This looks like an effort to at least define what that is, and I appreciate that. And so I'm going to vote for this bill today.
Mr. Gray, if you'd like to close.
Yes, sir. Well, first of all, thank you for the questions and the input, and certainly I would agree with the comments made by the committee members. The price tag is an important component here, and collectively we need to make that decision. I felt well positioned to come before this committee and before this legislature to make this argument because we have a situation right now in my community, in my district, where UC Merced struggles to build out its infrastructure and make those capital investments, and there is we'll call it a prevailing attitude out there that the legislature is not going to make the necessary investments to allow them to grow. And in fact, they've had to pursue basically a public-private partnership idea that the chancellor's developing to bring in the monies to build out the campus to service needs right now. And I think that's terribly unfortunate. I commend the chancellor and the UC system for working hard to make that work in the confines and the structure of today's finances. But I think it's a sad state of affairs for this institution if that's our level of commitment to building out these campuses, to providing the seats and an affordable, high-quality education. So I appreciate the committee's willingness to work with me, and I will keep my commitment to work with the committee to make sure that we come up with both the right financial numbers and a reinvestment in the future here for California. I think there's nothing more important that's going to be before us this year. And with that, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Gray, I want to thank you for the opportunity to visit UC Merced last week and to see all the room you do have for growth. And like you said, other campuses don't have the benefit of having the space that you have. Do I have a motion? We need a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. John Sawyer, second by Mr. Irwin. The motion is due pass to the Appropriation Committee. Madam Secretary.
Medina?
Aye.
Medina, aye. Baker? Aye. Baker, aye. Bloom? Aye. Bloom, aye. Chavez? Harper? No. Harper, no. Irwin? Aye. Irwin, aye. Jones Sawyer? Aye. Jones Sawyer, aye. Levine? Linder? No. Linder, no. Lowe? Santiago? Weber? Aye. Weber, aye. Williams? Aye. Williams, aye.
7-2, your measure passes. We'll leave it open so that absent members can add on.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we'll go to item 15, Assembly Bill 1385. Mr. Ting.
Yeah, the witnesses list. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank you personally, as well as your entire committee staff, for very much working very hard on both bills, 1385 and 1397. I know that you spent an inordinate amount of time, and I very much appreciate it, and I think very proud of the product that we came up with. So 1385 is one of my two accreditation reform bills to deal with the accreditation of community colleges here in the state of California. This has been a 2-year journey of mine where if you'd asked me 2 years ago or over 2 years ago whether we needed reform, I was frankly very skeptical. But over the last 2 years, I've seen not just what's happened in my own city with the City College of San Francisco, but fairly uneven treatment across the board of colleges across the state. Frankly, the best community college system in the country is here in California. And to see a commission sanction these colleges at a rate of over 50% when the national average is about 12%, something has really been something is really wrong. and I think that we can no longer hold our community colleges hostage, and I think we cannot expect the community colleges to reform this commission that frankly oversees their accreditation, which is their lifeblood. So with that, I present you AB 1385, which is really a bill to stop the blank check of the commission to take any fee at any amount possible around legal fees and to really fund any frivolous litigation. We'd like to thank the chair for the amendments, which we accept, and just respectfully ask your aye vote. We have a couple witnesses here, Tim Kelly from AFT 2121 and President Clare from the College of San Mateo.
Yes, we are in favor of AB 1385. We think that there should not be a blank check to continue to have surcharges that are basically being paying for some lawsuits that have occurred in the system. So we're in support of AB 1385.
Good afternoon. I'm Mike Clare, President of College of San Mateo. I do want to be clear that I'm representing myself and not the Community College CEO organization. I wanted to make that clear. And I, too, fully support the bill. Resources are limited at our community college, as you well know, and to pay dues and then on top of that, get hit with legal fees. That's money that's being diverted from our students. So I personally support the bill, and I know a number of my colleagues do. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Christy Baumer representing the California Federation of Teachers. And I think it's already been stated, given the magnitude of taxpayer dollars that are provide funding to our community colleges, I think as stewards of those funds, AB 1385 takes a pause on sort of passively funding legal teams that are defending failing accrediting commissions and providing the necessary oversight to restore some more credibility in the accreditation process. We urge your support.
Other witnesses in support.
Andrea York on behalf of FAC and Strong Support.
Good afternoon, Jennifer Baker with the California Teachers Association. We don't yet have a formal position, but we do have staff recommendation to support this legislation as it moves forward.
Michael Young, California Labor Federation, here in support.
Joe Stanton, External Affairs Senator for the Student Senate for California Community Colleges. I support this bill.
Any witnesses in opposition?
Ryan McElhaney with the Community College League of California, representing California's 72 community college districts and its 112 CEOs. Our board took an opposed position to this based off of their belief that accreditation is a voluntary peer review process, and that if this change is needed to be implemented, it would come from the colleges themselves. That being said, we certainly are appreciative of the amendments offered by the committee and taken by the author, and so we are looking forward to working with this bill going forward. Thank you.
Chairman Medina and members of the committee. I'm Dr. Norv Welsby. I'm the Associate Vice President of the ACCJC. I joined the Commission staff after a 40-year career in community colleges that included 31 years in Sacramento's Los Rios District as an administrator and faculty member. I also served for 6 years on the Commission representing faculty. The ACCJC Commission is made up of 19 members elected from the 131 member institutions. Those member institutions include, besides California community colleges, non-public two-year colleges in California, as well as two-year colleges in Hawaii and the Western Pacific. The Commission is a private organization composed of member institutions who pay dues and fees to support federally mandated accreditation activities. As a federally recognized accreditor, the ACCJC must meet all relevant federal requirements. Federal regulations require that ACCJC be a separate and independent private organization. Membership in the ACCJC is voluntary. In order to maintain its independence, the ACCJC cannot seek the approval of some of its member institutions in order to maintain its financial solvency and stability. The ACCJC must apply its standards consistently to all member institutions. Under federal regulations, the ACCJC cannot apply a different set of conditions to the California community colleges. And as an independent organization, ACCJC cannot be bound by the findings of the California Chancellor on issues related to federal regulations. The ACCJC undergoes regular review by the U.S. Department of Education in relation to its compliance with those federal regulations. Thank you for the efforts that your committee has taken to amend the bill, and we look forward to continuing to work with you on it. Thank you.
Any other witnesses in opposition?
Thank you, Chair and members. Ashley Situde on behalf of North Orange County Community College District. We don't have our letter in yet, but we do have concerns on the bill, and we'd like to align our comments with the Community College League of California. We look forward to working with the author's office. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Williams?
I think that both of the bills that you presented, if they provide more sunshine, I think that's something that I can agree to. I don't think there is a blank check for accreditation. Accreditation is hard. It's supposed to be hard. It's what sets us apart from the privates. And, you know, I think that there is still much to be done to make sure that San Francisco City College in particular is sustainable financially. The quality of education is there. The question is whether that the institution will be able to get into the black, because right now it's requiring a subsidy from every other community college and every other community college student in the state. And what we expect is for you guys to get your house in order and get into the black, because that $10 million is $10 million that should be going to our campuses, apportioned equally, but is not, because we care so much about your campus being able to survive. So I would appreciate it if folks spent less time trying to figure out every way to mess up ACCJC and more time figuring out how to get into the black.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Ting, if you'd like to close.
Thank you. Just to address my colleague from Santa Barbara's comments, very much take his comments to heart. Coming from San Francisco, we have a community college which is not only important to our city, but really very much to the entire state. The community college has worked very, very hard to really self-improve itself. It's identified, hundreds of tasks that we've completed. About 95% of the tasks that we set out to do that we believe should allow us to have accreditation. I feel very proud about that. If you'd asked me 2 years ago whether that was possible, I would have been very skeptical. But because of the hard work of the staff and the community, we've been able to make significant headway. But let me just go back to the bill for a sec. There is complete non-transparency in terms of public dollars that go to fund this commission. The commission is a private nonprofit. That is true. But it is primarily funded by member dues from the community college system, which is primarily funded by the state of California. And within this organization, there is absolutely no financial accountability that we would expect from any other nonprofit that we fund, whether it's direct or indirect. And I think this is a very moderate measure to bring some accountability and transparency to that process.
Thank you, Mr. Ting. I want to thank the author for taking the amendments, and I am going to recommend a yes vote to move the conversation forward. Do I have a motion? Need a motion? Moved by Mr. Levine, second by Ms. Weber. Madam Secretary.
Medina?
Aye.
Medina, aye. Baker? No. Baker, no. Bloom? Chavez? Harper? No. Harper, no. Irwin? Aye. Irwin, aye. Jones Sawyer? Levine? Aye. Levine, aye. Linder? Aye. Linder, aye. Lowe? Santiago? Weber? Aye. Weber, aye. Williams? Aye. Williams, aye.
6-2, it's on call.